So the transfer portal still isn't officially open, but we continue to get more and more big names that are announcing that they will be entering the portal once it officially does. And right now, this transfer class is looking absolutely loaded. So today I'm going over some of the newest players that we've heard that will be in the portal and where I think they could end up. So let's jump into it. So I wanted to start with a guy who was actually one of the hottest names in the portal last offseason, and that's Jaylen Low from Kentucky, because Low is one of the most interesting buy low names in the portal to me, because his recent season with Kentucky doesn't tell the full story. With the Wildcats, he averaged just 8 points and 2.5 assists and only played in 9 games on the season because of that preseason shoulder injury that he suffered. But before that, when he was at Pitt, he looked like one of the better league guards in the country, averaging nearly 17 points and 5.5 assists as a sophomore. And that is why this is such an important portal case to watch to me, because if there's a staff out there that believes this past year for Low was mostly about health and bad timing, they could be landing a true starting point guard with real offensive control and playmaking ability. And the value here is not what he showed at Kentucky, but in whether a new program believes it can get him back to being the version we saw before the injury at Pitt. And so some schools I could see making sense here are Arizona, USC, and Houston, all of which will be losing their lead point guards. And I think Jaylen Low, if he can get back to what he was, could be a really good fit here. And next we got Neocliss of Dallas, who is one of the most polarizing players in the portal right now because the upside is obvious with him, but there are inconsistencies too. A jumbo guard with real vision is always going to be appealing, and he showed that early with a huge opening performance with Virginia Tech against Providence, but then he definitely slowed down. But on the season, he still averaged 12 points and 4.5 assists, which tells you the playmaking is real, but the efficiency never fully came around for Avdalas. He was under 39% from the field and just 31.5% from three, and there were some defensive inconsistencies which made him a more complicated evaluation over the course of the season. But still, if there's a program out there that can believe it can clean up his shot selection, improve his shooting overall, and can put him in a more structured environment, there could be a true gem here. So this will be a classic portal bet on his traits, size, and creation ability. And so some schools that I think could make sense are going to be Illinois, Virginia, and obviously Kentucky. But maybe the best player in the portal right now is Miles Byrd from San Diego State, because Byrd is that kind of player winning programs always value, because even if he is not your primary scorer, he can raise the level of everything around him. He's 6'7" with length and mobility and gives you exactly what teams want from a modern wing. He rebounds well for his position, brings a lot defensively, and won Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year, which says a lot about the kind of impact he can have on that end of the floor. And offensively, there are still things that Byrd needs to clean up, especially when it comes to his decision making and self-creation, but that is also why he makes so much sense for programs that already have offensive stars and just need a high-level complementary piece here. And Byrd feels like one of those portal additions fans may not fully appreciate right away, but by the middle of the season, everybody's going to be talking about how important he is. And so I could see him fitting perfectly at a place like Houston, maybe even a Kentucky. They're reportedly interested. And then also you got Florida and Gonzaga that I both think could be really good spots for Miles Byrd. But my favorite player in the portal is actually Isaiah Johnson from Colorado. And Johnson is one of the biggest names on this list to me because what he did as a freshman at Colorado was not normal. He averaged 17 points per game, added in 3 assists, and broke the program's freshman scoring record with 540 points on the season. And Colorado's offense really started to run through him during Big 12 play, and he looked comfortable carrying a big scoring load despite being just a freshman. He also did it efficiently, shooting 47% from the field, which is impressive considering the creation burden he had with the Buffs. And then you add in a huge late season performance against Arizona, and it becomes easy to understand why so many major programs are going to be interested in this guy, because he is not just a young guard with upside, he's a player who already looks capable of being one of the best offensive pieces on a tournament caliber team. So I wouldn't be surprised if schools that need guards like Arizona, North Carolina, and Houston would all be interested. And then I've also heard rumblings of Maryland being a place that he could end up going to, so that's one to watch out for as well. But Isaiah Johnson isn't the only point guard that recently put his name in the portal, because Jeremiah Wilkinson also just announced his intention to enter the transfer portal. And Wilkinson is the type of guard that instantly draws attention because proven scoring is always going to be valuable when in the transfer portal. Jeremiah Wilkinson averaged 17.5 points per game at Georgia this past season. He had multiple 30-point games and clearly established himself as the team's go-to offensive option for stretches. He also added in 49 steals, and so there is some real defensive activity there as well. And at 36% from three, the shooting is solid enough to make defenses respect him, and the biggest question now is what his next role will look like, because if he goes somewhere with more talent around him, I'm interested to see if he'll stay a featured scorer or does he become more of an efficient secondary option. But either way, in a portal cycle where teams are going to be hunting for guards who can go get a bucket, Wilkinson is going to have real value here. So some schools that I think could make sense for him is going to be Miami, Kentucky, and even Arkansas, who's going to be losing Darius Acuff Jr. and Malik Thomas to the NBA draft. But I'm sure even more schools are going to be interested than just that. But Wilkinson wasn't the only player from Georgia to enter the transfer portal, because Somto Cyril also put his name in the portal as well. And Surreal feels like one of the safest impact bigs in the portal right now because his role and value are both very easy to understand. He shot 76% from the field, finished with an NCAA leading 83 dunks, blocked 74 shots, and earned SEC All Defensive Team honors. And that is elite interior efficiency and real rim protection that Surreal brings. Now, he's not a player you are building your whole offensive around because that's not the point with him. He's a rim runner, lob threat, rebounder, and defensive anchor, and he already brings exactly what a lot of winning teams need from the 5 spot. And if he adds any more offensive skill on top of that, then the ceiling for Surreal gets even more interesting. And for teams looking to get tougher and more athletic around the basket, Surreal is going to be a major name to watch. So some schools I could see being in the mix or making sense here are Arkansas, Florida, Kentucky, maybe even Michigan and Duke, and then Missouri with the overtime elite ties. But he is going to be one of the hottest bigs in the portal and currently my favorite name to watch. And there was another SEC team that lost a big name to the portal, and that's Missouri with Anthony Robinson II. And Anthony Robinson II is one of those portal names where his upside still feels bigger than the stats to me. He averaged 9 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists at Missouri, which is decent, but it doesn't really capture the flashes you see when watching him. This is a player who made the SEC All Defensive Team a year ago and still has the kind of two-way tools that make high major staffs believe there is another level in there. And the expected leap just never fully came this season, and as his role got shakier, a fresh start started to make more and more sense. And that is why this feels like a classic change of scenery type transfer, because he still has defensive value, he brings elite athleticism and enough skill to help a good team if he lands in the right role. So I could see him making sense back home near Florida State or maybe even Auburn, who could benefit from a player of his caliber. And I wouldn't be surprised if his breakout came this next season. But maybe one of the most interesting names in the portal is going to be Olivier Rio from Florida, because he is one of the most unique players in all of college basketball, because he's 7'9", so there is nothing normal when we're evaluating him. He played only 11 games this season and totaled just 16 minutes at Florida, but that's mostly because that front court was too deep for him to carve out a meaningful role. So this is much more of a developmental projection than a traditional production-based portal recruitment. But the intrigue is obvious because there is simply no one else like him in all of college basketball. But the real question is whether a program believes it can build an actual role around the size and help him become playable at a higher level. And he is one of the most fascinating portal stories out there simply because the physical profile is so extreme. So I have to put a team like Purdue and Michigan in there because they love their 7-footers, and then maybe even a Florida Atlantic because I could see him transferring down and benefiting from playing at a bit of a lower level. But all in all, I hope Rio finds a home and we get to see him play more than we have so far. But there were even more bigs that entered the portal. So up next, I got Fernando Fru from Louisville, and he's going to be very appealing to teams that need front court efficiency and reliability. This season with the Cardinals, he averaged 9 points, 6 rebounds, and 1.5 blocks per game while shooting 75% from the field, and he led the ACC in 2-point field goal percentage at 76.5%. He also led the team in rebounds and blocks, so the impact was very real even without high usage. But Rioux isn't necessarily a flashy player, but he is the type of big who rebounds, protects the rim, finishes around the basket, and helps simplify the game for the players around him. And in the portal, there is always going to be a value for guys who know exactly who they are and can play winning basketball without needing the offense built around them. So he feels like a very useful front court piece for a lot of teams. So any team right now that needs a big, I think they're going to be interested in looking at Rioux. And another big from the ACC that entered the portal was Mohamed Sila from Georgia Tech. And Sila is one of the more appealing upside bets among the bigs because what he showed early in the season was really impressive. As a freshman at Georgia Tech, he averaged 9.5 points, 7 rebounds, and 1 block in only 16 games, and he opened the year with 5 double-doubles in his first 6 games, and that tells you right away that the production was real. The issue, of course, is that ankle injury, which cut the season short for him and kept him from building on that momentum, but that is what makes him such an interesting portal evaluation, because if he is healthy, there is a lot to like here with his size, rebounding, defensive presence, and the real long-term upside that he showed. And he feels like one of those players who may not be a finished product just yet, but could become a really valuable addition in the right system. So I could see schools like Arkansas, Miami, and even Georgia, who just lost Santo Surreal, be interested in Sila, but wherever he ends up, he's going to have a big role next. But I wanted to jump out of the Power 5 and look at some of the top mid-major transfers that could make an impact next season. And so first up, I got Andrew McKeever from St. Mary's, and he's going to be one of the most coveted bigs in the portal simply because his size and rebounding are hard to find. He's 7'3" and 285 pounds and averaged 8 points in a WCC leading 9 rebounds in just 23 minutes per game with the Gales. And that is highly productive, especially when you remember he only started 10 games for St. Mary's, and his per minute impact really stands out, and that is going to make a lot of programs believe there's even more to unlock if he gets a bigger role. He also has 2 years of eligibility left, which makes him even more valuable for teams. And so any team that needs front court size immediately, McKeever is going to be high on their list. But I do think he could end up either at Purdue, who loves their bigs, or follow Randy Bennett to Arizona State, which seems like the most likely outcome to me. And then you got Drew Fielder from Boise State, and Fielder feels like one of the most attractive modern bigs in the portal because his offensive skill set is exactly what so many teams want. At Boise State, he averaged 15 points and 6 rebounds and shot 41% from 3 and led the Broncos in usage rate while also posting a really strong true shooting percentage. And that combination for a big is rare because he's not just a stretch big that stands around the arc. He can post up, score off the bounce, and function in different lineup styles. And that versatility is what's going to make him extremely valuable in the portal. And he looks like the kind of player who could fit as a stretch 4 or slide to the 5 in smaller lineups, which gives coaches a lot to work with. And in a portal class that seems to be full of guards, front court players with his offensive flexibility are going to be in serious demand. So I could see him getting a lot of high major offers. And then one of the best scorers from the mid-major level is Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn from UNLV, and he's the kind of portal scorer that gets people excited immediately because the production he brings is elite. He led the Mountain West in scoring at nearly 21 points per game, while also shooting nearly 50% from the field and 41.5% from 3, and that efficiency is what really jumps out to me because it makes the scoring feel even more legitimate. He is not just a player taking a lot of shots though, he's a player making them at a high level while carrying a major offensive burden, and the obvious question is how that translates against stronger defenses every night, but that is true for almost every mid-major scorer making the jump. And what makes Gibbs-Lawhorn especially interesting to me is that the efficiency gives you more confidence that the offense is real, and he feels like one of the best pure offensive portal names on this list. Finley Bizjack is another guard name in the portal to watch because he's going to draw a lot of interest because shooting always translates, and he has proven he can do it in a power conference now with Butler in the Big East. And with Butler, he averaged 17 points per game, earned 13 All Big East honors, and became one of the most sought-after shooters expected to be available. And even though the three-point percentage sits at just 35%, the volume matters a lot because he was taking over 6 threes a game and still creating real gravity with defenders. And that kind of perimeter pressure opens up a lot for an offense. He is also testing the NBA draft process, which adds another layer to his portal situation, but I do believe he's going to stay in college college, and he feels like the type of guard who could help a high major team immediately as a scorer and a floor spacer. And reportedly, Kentucky is one of the schools that's going to be interested in him, but I'm assuming there's going to be a lot that's going to be reaching out to BizJack. And another guard out of the Big East that entered the portal is Malik Mack from Georgetown, and he brings a pretty clear mix of volume scoring, playmaking, and experience. Mack averaged 13.5 points, 4 assists, and 3 rebounds per game at Georgetown, and the assist number is especially important because it shows he can handle the ball and create for others, not just himself. And he also took on a major offensive burden with the Hoyas this season, which is part of why the efficiency was up and down at times, but a new setting could help him a lot, especially if he lands somewhere with better spacing and more support around him. And in that type of environment, there's a good chance the best parts of his game become more efficient and easier to maximize. He has already shown he can carry responsibility, and now it is about finding the right roster context. And Virginia is one school I could see making sense based on the past interest that they showed in Mac, but I wouldn't be surprised if any of these schools needing guards are going to reach out. But maybe one of the best shooters in the portal is Wes Ennis from USF, but Ennis entered the portal with a do not contact tag, which makes this one especially interesting because it usually suggests there may already be a direction in mind, and Providence would make a lot of sense here if he ends up following Brian Hodgson, and I believe that's what's going to happen. But wherever he lands, the value for Ennis is pretty clear. He was one of the best shooters in the country this season. He made over 100 threes, earned first team all AAC honors, and then turned it up even more in the AAC tournament where he averaged 21.5 points and 2.5 steals per game. And that tells you he is not just a standstill shooter, but he can get things rolling and completely swing games for a team. And for other teams looking to add perimeter firepower, he is going to be a very attractive option, but I still believe he's going to follow Brian Hodgson and end up at Providence next season. But the most fascinating name in the portal now has to be Dior Johnson from Tarleton State, because his scoring numbers this season were outrageous. At Tarleton State, he averaged 24 points per game in only 20 appearances, and he did that while starting in only 2 games, so for the majority of it, he was coming off the bench. He also dropped 42 points against Baylor, which is the kind of performance that reminds everybody about his raw talent, and the obvious concern is going to be his availability and maybe even those off-court issues that we've heard of with him, but more so with the availability because his injuries limited the season and the sample size is not huge for Dior. But if you are a staff looking for offensive upside, this is exactly the kind of swing you have to at least think about. And there are not many players in the portal who can match this kind of scoring explosion, and that makes him one of the more boomer bust bets in this class. But my favorite mid-major guard that's going to be in the portal this offseason is actually Alex Wilkins from Furman, and he had a fantastic freshman season with the Paladins and looks like one of those guards who could really take off at a bigger program. He averaged nearly 18 points, 5 assists, and had a 21-point game against UConn in the NCAA tournament and was trusted to run the offense right away at Furman. And at 6'5", he has really nice size for a lead guard, and stylistically, he sounds like the kind of player who can pressure defenses downhill while also using pace and footwork to create openings. And the next swing skill for him is going to be the shooting consistency, but he flashed it during the SoCon tournament, and if that becomes more stable, his value will rise quite a bit. But Wilkins feels like a player with a real long-term upside, and Boston College has been one of the schools that's been linked to him already, and I think that'd be a great addition for Luke Murray in his first season as the head coach. And next we got Tyrone Riley IV, and he is exactly the kind of wing that high major programs are always trying to find. He is 6'6", athletic, rangy, and coming off a season at San Francisco where he averaged 12 points and 5 rebounds while shooting nearly 37% from 3. He also already has NBA eyes on him, which tells you evaluators see real long-term tools here. And what makes Riley especially appealing is that his profile fits so cleanly into winning basketball because he's long, he brings perimeter shooting, he has versatility and room for even more growth. And he may not have the loudest numbers on this list, but the archetype is incredibly valuable. It makes me think that a lot of high major programs are going to be interested in him, and I could see him making sense at UCLA and USC, so both of the 2 big California schools. And then it's also been rumored that Kentucky is looking at him as well, but I definitely think he's going to be at one of the top programs in the country. And then we got one of the best shooters in the portal, and that's Brett Decker Jr. from Liberty, and he has one of the clearest offensive fits in the portal because his elite shooting is one of the most valuable traits a player can bring to a team, and he absolutely has it. At Liberty, he averaged 17 points per game and shot 47% from 3 on over 7 attempts, which is an absurd number, and that was the second best 3-point percentage in Division 1 this season, and it instantly makes him one of the best floor spacing options available. And in today's game, where so much offense is built around spacing and high volume perimeter shooting, a player like Decker has immediate value, and he feels like one of those names where the fit is not hard to imagine at all. And so I could see a school like Kentucky, but especially Louisville and Tennessee, being interested in Brett Decker because they're always looking for that type of shooting. But a name that popped during March Madness was Thomas Dowd from Troy, and he feels like one of those players coaches are going to love once they watch the tape because he impacts winning in a lot of different ways. At Troy, he averaged 14.5 points, 10 rebounds, and 2 assists, while also adding in some steals and blocks, and he was one of only 14 players nationally to average a double-double. But what really stands out is how he gets his offense. He has a high motor off-ball forward who creates second chance points, cuts really well, and still has enough perimeter skill to keep defenses honest. And add in some defensive energy, and you get a player who does not need the ball all the time to matter. And for programs needing toughness and front court production, Dowd is going to be a strong option. And Georgia Tech is a school I have to mention because he could follow his former head coach Scott Cross over to Georgia Tech, but I wouldn't be surprised if even bigger programs reached out. But another one of the best shooters in the portal is going to be Brant Byers from Miami, Ohio, because he could rise quickly for teams because teams are always looking for wings who can really shoot it, and he definitely can. For the Redhawks, he averaged 14 points, started 33 games, and shot right around 40% from 3 while helping lead a team to a 32-2 overall record. And the resume is going to get attention, but what stands out most is his combination of a quick release and the ability to attack closeouts, because that makes him more than just a catch and shoot specialist. And if he can hold up defensively at the next level, then this is the type of player who fits really cleanly into most systems, and he feels like a very easy portal role projection for teams that need perimeter offense and are looking for one of the best shooters in the country. And finally, I want to mention Cameron Hunter from Central Arkansas, because based on his talent and production alone, he is obviously going to draw some high major attention. At Central Arkansas, he averaged 21 points per game and shot nearly 37% from 3, which gives you the profile of a veteran scoring guard who can help a lot of teams next season. But the biggest issue for him is going to be the eligibility, because he has already used 4 years but is pursuing an additional year. So until that gets settled though, any recruitment here comes with some uncertainty. But still, if he does get that extra year, he immediately becomes one of the more intriguing veteran scorers in the portal to me. And it's already been reported that Kentucky, along with a lot of the other guys, are interested in Cameron Hunter, but he hasn't ruled out a possible return to Central Arkansas also. But whatever happens, this is only the beginning, and once the portal officially opens, things are going to happen extremely fast. But let me know in the comments who your favorite portal target is, and who do you think your team should go out and get. Also, if you enjoyed the content, don't forget to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned for more college basketball transfer portal content, and I'll see you in the next one.